Up. Mr. Kevin Roche. I'm sure there's a lot of interest here today about this one.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good stuff.
Got it.
We gotta.
Really good. And there's more to the problem than there's, well,
It's all about affordable housing.
it's really important.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, Council President. Thank you for having me here today. It's quite a pleasure to be here. I hate following good presenters, though, so we'll see how I do. So I'm here to give you an interim report on the study that you all commissioned of the County Fire Service, and I certainly recognize the expertise on the council on these issues. I think I'll take about 15 minutes in questions, and then we'll be back with the final presentation when it's done. So this is just an interim presentation for your information now. So basically, I'd like to talk about the activity that we undertook in the county. I do want to say that every company that we met with was very open, very happy to talk to us. We didn't sense any pushback from them. The hospitality was wonderful, so we did get to talk to almost all the companies in the county. I'm going to make some observations about the fire service in Sussex County, the process going forward, and then when we'll be able to deliver the final report to you. So as you know, to start with, all three counties in Delaware commissioned a similar study to look at the fire services in their county. We think it's really, really important to look over the horizon. Very smart of the councils to do that, because the volunteer fire service, the volunteer fire and EMS service are the best bargain that local government has had in the last 200 years or more in our country. They take on quite a bit of a burden that's provided by local governments in many places. So we think it's very smart to look forward. Our analysis was not on their operations, but on their finances to assess their health and see how they're doing. The second part of our charge was to look at the key cost and revenue drivers and review each company's financial policies. So we did that. This county's ahead of other counties where you do have more detailed reporting requirements for the volunteer companies each year, and that helped. It was a great window into their operations and their finances as we went through this process. And then we're going to consider options for a more sustainable model for the county going forward. So we had in-person interviews with the leadership of each fire company, usually with the company president, and at the president's option, they would invite others to the meeting, typically members of their board and the fire chief. So we did get to meet with each one. We discussed the services that each company provides, and most of them are quite similar. You know, they all provide fire protection, all the fire companies, but they provide different levels of specialty services sometimes. We looked in detail at their income and their expenditures, and then we looked at their debt and the amount of reserves that each company had, and all that will be presented in the final report. We took a little tour of the fire stations just so we could put our eyes on the facilities and kind of get a feel for what the condition was of the capital infrastructure for the department. And then we collected, in addition to the records that the county collects, we did collect much more detail from the fire companies. I think that's going to be a theme in my presentation, is there's a lot of data for us to go through, and I think that's why it's taken us so long. We were able to meet with 22 of the 23 companies. We took their financial statements, profit and loss statements. If the companies had applied for grants, we looked at the grants that they applied for, and many of them do. We tried to assess their membership and their staff. We looked at their fleet, looked at the debt schedules that they may have. I hate to read you this whole slide. If the companies had employment agreements or union contracts, we looked at those. We looked at their financial policies and procedures. We paid specific attention to the contribution that the volunteers make, trying to quantify the dollars or the number of hours of effort that each volunteer company received from their members. And then we looked at their billing contracts. Every company uses an outside billing contractor to send bills. Well, if those that have the ambulance service, they use an outside contractor. So we looked at those agreements. So in our discussion, again, we tried to characterize volunteer hours and how they're tracked. And most companies do track volunteer hours or volunteer effort in order to remain an active member of the company. We looked at if the companies had live-in programs or other programs that encouraged firefighters and EMTs to be around. We looked at the number of stations and apparatus and structures that each company had, total land area, in population, and we used a static number just because the numbers are difficult to discern year to year. We did use a static number for population across the 5 years of the study. We looked at their call volume, which is Dr. Tam pointed out is growing for every company really. We looked at critical infrastructure within their districts. That's occupancies that could present a special problem or extended problem if there were emergencies there. We looked in detail at their revenue and expenditures, billing again, and then if the companies received any in-kind services. So some companies receive either reduced cost or free utilities, water, trash from their communities. Not every company does, just some do. So our observation is that the fire service in Delaware and in Sussex County has a long and proud history. If you visit a fire station, you can't miss the pride that they have in their companies with the awards that they have from the past and photos of as their company grew, over the last 100+ years as they worked. The fire service in the United States, especially the volunteer service, is changing. The number of volunteers is going down dramatically in most places in the country, and that's no different in the 3 counties in Delaware. Every volunteer company is smaller than it was when I was a young man. I started out as a volunteer in upstate New York, and my company at the time, was very robust. They're struggling. My own company is. The costs of operating a fire department are rising, most dramatically with the fleet. Pumpers and ambulances and ladder trucks are much more expensive than they were even just 5 years ago. There's a rising demand for services where people depend especially on EMS service to be their primary care physician, as Dr. Tam and his staff just gave an excellent presentation on. And the system grew organically. The station locations aren't from some master plan. They just happened over the last 100 years or 200 years where the companies landed. So there's no strategic plan that governs where the companies are or what services they provide or what apparatus they operate. The primary revenues for all the companies in the county, with a couple exceptions, state revenue is the primary source of revenue, county revenue is the second highest source, and then the third highest source is typically EMS revenue, ambulance transportation revenue that they get through their billing companies. That's true except for 2 companies that do not provide ambulance service. The financial condition of the companies varies widely across the county. There are departments that have, no debt, significant reserves, and then there are companies that are really living hand to mouth. The leadership of the companies in general, without pointing out any specific company, is aging, and they're concerned about what the next generation is going to be, who's going to follow them in the volunteer service. So we heard a description that there's sort of a donut in membership. There's a large number of fairly young members. There's a large number of fairly old members, but there's that donut hole in the middle while people pursue their careers, pursue growing their families, and so on. So they're worried about that. And they're very, very proud of their autonomy. They're independent corporations. They don't want to be told what to do. They understand that they're a part of a system, but they're very, very proud of their autonomy. There is no nationally accepted method for evaluating the financial health of fire companies. So what we did is we looked outside at other governmental evaluation tools, and we found one in Pennsylvania called the Financial Monitoring Handbook. Not every factor that you would evaluate a whole community on applies to fire departments or to rescue squads. So we picked out 13 evaluation factors, including revenue, expenses, what their cash position was, how much debt they held, and then a factor on the solvency of the company. And all that will be reported in the final report. So it was at our request that we delayed the delivery of the final report. The draft report is 544 pages as it stands now. There's a ton of data in the report, and you'll see that. There's a ton of data. We wanted to make sure that we were right on the data. We wanted to give the fire companies an opportunity to review our work and make sure that we were right about the numbers that we were citing. So we asked the county to delay the delivery of the report by about a month and a half. So the revised draft with some clarifications in it should be back to Sussex County Management no later than May 1st. We plan on having the fire companies review that for 2 weeks. We're going to conduct some either office hours or call-ins where if fire companies have questions or want to make corrections. We'll be live on a Zoom, and they can come in and ask questions or give us clarifications or corrections to the information that we have. We think we'll have that report back to county management by the end of May, and then we'll be back to you with a final presentation in June, perhaps late May, depending on your schedule and the will of the council. So that's just an update for you this morning. I'm glad to answer questions. I certainly recognize the expertise of council members, and very, very glad to be here. Looking forward to coming back and delivering the final report.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to comment, thank you for taking the time to do that. And I do see two fire chiefs in the room. It looks like they came to listen to your meeting rather than going to FDIC. So thanks for skipping Indianapolis and joining us today in county chambers. But just personally, this is something, even when I was president of a fire company 10 years ago, I do not think the cost of the personnel costs that we've been incurring in the fire service has been accounted for by all players, not just the county. There's a lot of different people that should have skin in the game in supporting the fire service and make sure it's healthy. I think, from what I've seen, the report does a good job of pointing some of that out. But also, one thing that I've heard while we have this topic is maybe a revolving loan fund. The state of Delaware does that. That really can be done at no expense to the Sussex County taxpayer and loaning money to different fire companies, which gets paid back, but at certainly a decreased interest rate. While we consider all this, I think it's just important to recognize is we are not the only player in funding the fire service. So I'd say this is anything we do should be, we should have assurance from the state that they're not going to back off on their commitment to the volunteer fire service. Dr. Tam just mentioned reimbursement rates. The state of Delaware could help out today by fixing the reimbursement rates, and they've made some progress, but we could certainly fix reimbursement rates. And if history is any judge, what I don't want to see is that we address the fire service, but the state of Delaware back away on its commitment to the fire service. So I think it's very important as we move forward with this, we guarantee that the fire service will remain at levels, if not increase their levels of funding to the fire and ambulance service as we move forward. Thank you.
Councilman.
Anybody else? Okay, we thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.